I don't even know if you guys would know the answer or be able to say it, but a bunch of people asked, of course.
Sure.
Will Daggerheart replace D&D in Campaign 4 of Critical Role? Oh yeah, so just like talk into that at what feels like a normal volume, normal distance from your mouth.
Testing. This is us talking and testing.
Yeah.
Good. Hey, I'm Bob. This is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together. And today I am joined by two wonderful people who happen to be the designers of Critical Role's Darrington Press's Daggerheart role-playing game. Please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Spencer Stark.
I'm Rowan Hall.
That was easy. Okay.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
But we're here to make your life easy. That's
All right. Well, yeah, and some people might have seen. I got to interview them last year in the very early stages of this, but now it's like past the late stages.
We
like
had
it's
to
done.
play test and make a terrain out of sugar packets and coffee pieces.
Yeah, we've come a long way since then, I guess. So.
Yeah, the rules are finalized. We're doing a show at PAX with the finalized rules. The book is downstairs, and it's like proof
the book
form.
is in the house. Okay.
It's the proof book, so it's not. We're still able to they haven't printed all of them yet, but but we got a little preview.
All right. Well, in this not sponsored video, they'll be graciously answering your questions about Daggerheart, starting with a fun one from DM Milkman, who wants to know, what is the one joke you wish you hid in the system that you didn't think of or had the chance to? Maybe there's already a lot of jokes you did put in there, so it's hard to think of one.
Oh, God.
It's the ribbit.
Oh, yes, the ribbit. We have a joke that with the ribbit, because it's on... I think we just talked about it.
Okay.
It's on page 69.
Nice.
And canonically in Daggerheart, the tongue is a finesse weapon.
It's true. So it's ribbit's on page 69 and the tongue is a finesse weapon. It is. That's the joke.
The joke is in the book. Awesome. Okay. Now some beginner-minded questions about Daggerheart. From William Thomas. Where should someone who has no prior knowledge about Daggerheart start?
Well, hopefully the core rulebook is going to start them at the very beginning. And
Sure.
I don't mean that to be facetious. We specifically wrote this with first-time TTRPG players in mind.
Awesome.
Hopefully, I think one of the things that we had a wonderful opportunity to do when playtesting this is get a lot of tables together with people who said that they were, quote, not creative and hadn't played TTRPGs before.
Okay.
And our goal was to make every aspect of the game accessible to those humans. Because those of us who have played a lot of TTRPGs, we can skip pages in books, we can bounce around, you can read overviews.
Oh, this is like this game and this part is,
But hopefully the text itself, and especially I have a fondness for the call-out boxes, the tips, and the examples will get someone right up to speed from page one. That's cliche, but ideally, if you have your card in your hand, you know everything you need to know about that ability.
Yeah, we aim for it to be like a session or two of play, and then you kind of know everything you need to know.
Right.
And that was a big challenge, obviously, because the complexity of the system has to be there so that it lasts for
so it's like sustainable
long
for a
enough,
longer game,
like
kind of
75
thing,
sessions or like whatever it is. And so so creating a ramping, like from level 1, a ramp up to level 10 was kind of the goal there. But I think if you're looking for somewhere that's not the core rulebook to start,
like if there are free resources out there.
So Critical Role has a primer on Daggerheart that they made for the show that's happening right now that just launched. That's like, I think it's like 3 minutes or something, and it's like, here's everything you need to know to follow along.
Awesome.
I think that's really good.
Quick start guide.
There's a quick start guide that came out for the open beta, and that's a really great place to start.
Is that the one with the Sablewood Messengers?
Yes.
Okay.
The Sablewood Messengers is a quick start guide, and that'll be updated for the with the latest mechanics for the game.
I'm really excited about the GM section of the book as well. For people who are new to GMing, this book should provide the tools people need to feel incredibly confident in a narrative GMing system.
Cool.
That kind of harkens that sits in that balance between narrative and crunch. It's got tons of delicious stat blocks, but it also breaks down some improving rules. And
nice.
Yeah, like narrative structure. It teaches you narrative structure. It teaches you like how do you tie backstories together, right? We really were trying to think about like the way in which we could create how to create arcs in your stories.
Story
like,
structure across campaigns or across episodes. Sessions.
Well, I'm already going off the rails here a bit, but that's awesome because I've recently been thinking so much about how games that put the GM rules in the core rulebook make it so much easier for the player to become a GM.
Yeah.
So just because it's right there.
It's right there. All you do is flip
let's
one more
hide
chapter.
it in this other book.
Become a GM.
Exactly.
Become a GM. Well, and I think that one of the things that I really wanted to make sure was because we were talking about the game being a narrative system, and because the mechanics are designed around being a narrative system, like we want to put our money where our mouth is in some respect. Like if it's a narrative focused game, then we should teach you the narrative side, not just the mechanical side.
Totally.
And how those intersect, right? Like, where's the intersection of those? Like, if a player, it sounds really simple, but like, if a player takes a particular mechanic, how do you incorporate that mechanic they've taken into the sessions that you play with them? Because if somebody takes an ability where they can catch an arrow and throw it back at another adversary, right? Like,
shoot your monks.
Why?
It's archers all day, baby.
Why would I not want to give them some archers to do that cool thing with, right? Like they are taking that because they want to be able to do that,
right?
And so the book has sections that the very like the very minuscule like tiny thing that I think hopefully talks about the larger thing is like, give them what they want. Like give them the things that they want to be able to play with, right? But like that across the whole board. So
okay. From that, so we talked about there's already a free quick start guide out there, and that'll be updated soon. This is one of the will they questions that I shoved up here, because there are a bunch of those that I've saved kind of toward the end. But will there be a like starter box for Daggerheart at some point? Like, is that an idea? Is that already in the works?
So
is that a thing you can or cannot talk about? I don't know.
So we can. The only things that we can talk about are the core set and the limited edition that came out. But I think that
are currently for pre-order.
Pre-order.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
The pre-order is currently out. And they're currently out at the booth. Is kind of where my brain is going. But the future of what products we make, we really are excited about a bunch of different things, and we want to hear from the community what they want.
Okay.
So if there is a big demand for that kind of thing,
I demand a box set.
Right. And the core set is a boxed experience.
Right. Yeah.
Because it comes with cards and it comes with a book.
Okay.
So you will get everything you need to play the game. But yeah, I think we really want to hear what the community wants and what they're excited about, and where they think that, like, what level would you want that to go to, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that a level 1 thing? Is that a level 1 through 3 thing? Is that like where? And once the game gets in the hands of lots of people,
a lot of those questions will be answered.
We'll be able to find out where people feel like, oh, I want to introduce my players to this. What's something that we can give them to?
Yeah.
I mean, and I can say from experience, the Sablewood Messengers Quick Start, like that's what we played.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a great time with
Great,
it.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. And, okay, so now we're going to shift a little bit from, total beginner stuff into some other foundational things, I guess. So people watching may already know Daggerheart, mechanics-wise, 2d12, rolling high, plus an attribute, and the value of those D12s can put a little twist, positive or negative, on the result. But what a bunch of the top questions wanted to ask was from a thematic perspective, like foundational but thematic. Like, what are the core, or rather, here's the question. I'll just read the question. From Matthias NL. So you might know that Draw Steel, the MCDM, Matt Colville and Friends RPG, has been advertised constantly and clearly as tactical, heroic, cinematic fantasy. So what are the key words you would use to describe Daggerheart? And what interpretation of those words supports the fantasy that the game wants to give its players?
I think
really
there's some overlap in the words that we use.
Sure.
But I would say, heroic fantasy is the genre that we're going for.
Definitely.
Definitely cinematic story focused.
Yeah. So you drop narrative a bunch of times.
I always say narrative forward heroic fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is my briefest possible logline pitch.
Yeah.
The elevator pitch. If you only go one floor.
Yeah.
That's like the go-to.
I think also like
so maybe
heartfelt, right? Or like emotion,
That's in
like
the title.
emotional,
Yeah.
like it's in the title, right? Like like we want people to engage with their characters on an emotional level because I think that inherently creates a more narrative and cinematic kind of experience.
So can we like define, like when you say narrative forward or more narrative focused, like what does that mean to you? Like what do you want people to take from that keyword?
Oh, you should take it away. You have this really good pitch on this.
So narrative forward for me means that like the choices that are being made from the GM and from the players are to forward the story that we are all telling collaboratively.
Okay.
Right? So all the mechanics should point, or at least most of the mechanics, a majority of the mechanics should point to that as the primary mode of operation at the table.
Yeah.
And so by encouraging I think experiences are a really good example of that, where like we have these narrative tags essentially that describe who your character is instead of a list of skills or instead of like a big like list of things to choose from. You are essentially just saying like, if I'm a pirate, I write down pirate, and anytime I do piratey things I get to invoke pirate, right? And so that does, I think, taking that as the example, it does one of two things, right? Like, one, it puts a descriptor, some sort of narrative descriptor on your character sheet. So instead of saying I'm good at climbing, I'm good at swimming, I'm good at all these things, it says, no, I'm good at being a pirate. So it invokes the backstory. I think also for players that are more mechanically minded or focusing on the mechanics, it reinforces the importance of their character's backstory because if they're like, hey, I want to have the best possible role I can have. So in order to do that, I have to be able to invoke pirate on this thing. So how can I do this in a piratey way?
How can I swashbuckle?
Right. That lets me get that bonus. But in doing that, it then makes you think about how
you're being a little more creative
reacts.
with your action.
So I think that's like a microcosm with a macrocosm of what Daggerheart is hoping to do, which is like provide mechanical reinforcement for narrative style play.
I think in play that manifests often as what does your character want to do rather than what does the player want to do. So thinking like, if I'm a dwarf running through the woods, I want to hop off all the rocks and climb up into the tree and slay the bird monster rather than invoking the mechanics of it. So I'm going to use this card and then this card in the stack there. And of course there is a natural ebb and flow to that as we play games, but especially for new players, going back to your previous questions, getting to sit down with people and say like, imagine this with me. Like the most base level of playing pretend is what does your character want to do, and having mechanics that support that type of play.
Cool. Good answer. Okay. We're going to shift briefly back to mechanics, I think, here, because this was a kind of more pointed version of the same question for people who just are dying to know. Actually, this was from Tiny Dinosaur.
Thanks, Tiny Dinosaur.
What does Daggerheart do better than D20 fantasy?
Oh, well, I don't know if I can say necessarily what it does better, because I think that games are
different.
It's going to be different tastes for different people.
Right, like everybody likes
so
different
obviously
stuff.
this is your preference, I guess. So like, what do you think it does a little better?
I think for me, in the style of gameplay that I like, it's designed to provide an onboarding for new players.
Okay.
That allows you easy access to the game, like just by having cards as its foundation. I can put a bunch of cards in front of a player who's never played a role-playing game before, and they can just choose the ones that they like. And then they can just put those in front of them and go.
Oh, that's a cool picture. I'll take this.
I like that. I like that art. I'm taking that. What does it do? And then they can ask. And so I think that it was really important for me that it was something that was easy to get into, and then the complexity builds, right? And so I'm really hoping that it is easy to onboard newer players into, and also provides the kind of like advice both in the GMing and in the player section that supports people that want to tell stories. So
I would second that again, because like I said earlier, the fact that you're creating a game that has like the GM rules in the same book. A lot of D20 fantasy games are the ones that don't do that because they're following D&D's paradigm of separating that stuff.
We quite like D20s. We gave one to the GM. Like that's
yeah, that's true.
Purposeful.
Yeah, it's not just D12. GM does get to roll D20. Yeah.
I think the thing that I like about the D12s is, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you have an 8.33% chance of critting.
You crit more in Daggerheart. Yeah.
But also that bell curve of success.
Yeah.
Characters can rely on their skills. You are more likely to hit this nice average, and once you add in your modifiers, you're cooking with gas. That supports our narrative goals in that the players are the main characters, they're the protagonists, they have these big powerful abilities, you can rely on them, and then the GM has that flat 5%, it's swingy, when they fail big it's so fun, when they succeed big it's devastating and so fun.
That's cool.
So we love a D20, we just also love 2D12.
Well, and that's a good emphasis on like just something better or worse, whatever, but differently, like the asymmetrical nature of that, where the GM's core role is kind of different than the player's.
Totally. Well, I was also, just before we leave this topic, was going to talk about campaign frames, because I think those are also something that set us apart from other systems, in that we have a whole chapter that are essentially campaign like structure for you to use, and all of the campaign frames have different varying genre, like levels of subgenre. So we have one called the Witherwild, which is sort of a like more traditional fantasy kind of setting, and then we have the one that we're presenting today on the panel, which is Beast Feast, which is like very inspired by like Delicious in Dungeon, right? And so there are like campaign, it gives you like a whole starting like town and caves to start in. Excellent. And then like gives you some backstory stuff, gives you some NPCs, gives you and then gives you campaign mechanics to add to your game that change the way in which you play. Like in Beast Feast, for example, who we collaborated on with Banana Chan, who's brilliant, and love Banana. She did such a good job of evoking the like whimsy that we are looking for in Beast Feast. But in that game, in that campaign frame, you don't take downtime the same way you do in Daggerheart. The normal Daggerheart, you don't like choose downtime options that have you like clear stress and HP and earn hope. Instead, you're collecting ingredients from the things that you fight, and then you're cooking a meal, and that meal determines how you clear stuff. But there's a mini game, a cooking mini game, for how you clear all of your stress, and depending on what ingredients you get and how those ingredients like are harmonious together, like how well and how often you've made that recipe, like you do a better job and you clear more stress.
There's also different offerings for the starting weapons, so you come from a place that they haven't had violence for ages, for decades and decades and decades. So when you start the campaign, you have weapons that you could find in your town. So you could have a butcher knife, you could have a fishing pole.
Yeah, just tools.
You could have fireworks, you could have a cookie sheet armor, or like a barrel lid as your armor. And I love it's gosh darn whimsical, but I just love the idea of having to start so small with your weapons.
Well, I don't know if fans of this channel will know that I also enjoy Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is a game where you start out as 4 peasants per player. So I don't know what you guys know about that or not. But anyway, so totally on that kind of thing. And so that's just one of these campaign frames you mentioned. How many are in the book?
6,
I believe.
Okay.
One of the other ones I'm really excited about is are we doing Colossus? Talking about Colossus?
Better
this is
talk
a
about
Colossus of the Drylands, which is like, what if what if you combined Shadow of the Colossus and Red Dead Redemption?
Okay.
So it's like a sort of a fantasy Western themed Weird West, but with colossi that have sprouted up from the dry lands.
All magic in that world is powered by crystals. If you don't have them, you don't have magic.
Fun.
You get starting weapons that are like gunslinger weapons. You can have a lasso. You can have the double revolvers.
Yeah, everybody has them out.
Everyone has a mount,
Cool.
and you get to choose if it's a horse or a giant jackalope.
Okay.
Or
a
scorpion,
robot,
or whatever you want. So,
Cool.
so we have those specific things, and then the campaign frames give you guidance on like how would you what's the inciting incident? Here's an option for an inciting incident for a campaign. Here's
Awesome.
some guidance on we have communities and ancestries. How are these ancestries different? How are these communities different because of the campaign frame, right? So we're kind of taking subgenre and saying how does that subgenre modify the core set that we've created for Dagger?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That's going to tap right into another question here from Hendo. How geared towards running games in homebrew worlds is Daggerheart? Will there be a GM supplement for this kind of thing? Is what they say.
So I mean, it's designed fully to have you homebrew.
I can't wait for people to homebrew.
The game specifically doesn't come with a canon setting. It's designed for you to build the setting in its core, at the rules is written.
Sure.
It's designed for you to take a map, throw it to the players at your table, have them all fill out things on the map, and then for you to go and develop that as the GM.
Okay.
Which is in harmony with that collaborative role-playing nature.
Exactly, yeah.
But there's nothing stopping a GM from building out their own map and starting. And also those campaign frames hopefully provide good structure for if I wanted to think about this from a campaign structure standpoint, how would I how can I use those to structure out my homebrew world?
It is my absolute hope that people see campaign frames and then homebrew campaign frames.
Yeah.
Right. Just kind of use that as an outline for how to set one up, I guess.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Awesome. And that's also kind of answering another good question here was, what do you think, because we already touched on this a bunch, I think, but the question, another one from DM Milkman, was what do you think people can learn most from Daggerheart compared to other games? And for me to answer that, I feel like playing with you guys last year, it was just such an awesome reminder of how the GM can really just ask the players to fill in any gap they want. There's so much pressure, I feel like a lot of times, that especially a new GM can feel oh, I don't know the answer to this thing at this very moment. Oh, I could just have one of them make it up instead of me just making it up right now. And that collaboration, I don't know, is super fun and core to what my group kind of does at home. So I really hope more people can learn that from Daggerheart and hope that, your guys' style of running comes through in the book in that way. So yeah.
That's how we play in our home games with our friends.
Yeah.
And it definitely takes the edge off of having to GM, but it's also, I think, speaking only from my personal experience, the moments that I've thought I failed as a GM where I couldn't figure it out or I failed are almost always, to be cliche, the moments that a player has picked something up and just home run.
Totally.
Put their idea in it and gone.
I think one of the things that I hope that people take away from it, and I've watched this happen in practice so often, even when I had players that were skeptical about the collaborative role-playing side, because that's something that's new to a lot of players that have been playing traditional games.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm really excited about for people to see and hopefully learn from, integrate into their play, is the idea that inviting your players to add to the world in whatever way you feel comfortable as a GM, whether that's hey, describe the armor of this
Totally.
NPC,
That kind of stuff is great. The
or whether it's
details.
name the NPC, which is a little bit further, or hey, you said you're from this place, will you tell me what that place is like?
Yep.
Right? And then all of a sudden we have, or in the map, passing it around, the thing, actually using the map as an example here. When players choose a thing that they're excited about put it on the map, and then as a GM I go, tell me about that place. And then they make up some wild stuff.
Yeah.
And then I as a GM go, I see you. And write it down.
Yeah.
When I say the name of that place in a session, like 10 days or 10 sessions later, they all know it and get excited about it.
That moment. Yeah.
Because they made it.
Right.
And even if they weren't the one who made it, the table made it. And so, like, somebody might ask, like, oh, about the, they might ask a question about it because they want clarification, and now all of a sudden the table is collaborating on this place. And so when I bring it back up, it feels like there's excitement around things that, like, they are invested.
Easier, that's exactly the word I was about to use. It's easier for them to get invested when they literally have a stake in whatever that thing is.
And I feel like that's in synergy with the Ancestry community design. Like, that is built into the game from the moment the players begin, and so we kind of ramp them up into feeling empowered to do that. So we worked with Sean Ellis, our brilliant concept artist, to make a kind of spectrum of examples of what each ancestry could look like. So, like, if you're playing a Dracana, are they maximum amount dragon, or are they maximum amount human with
some scales?
You get to decide that for your character, and then also, by extension, you can decide that for your world. You could play a campaign frame, callback, where all Dracana looks super dragony, or you could say, in this world, they could have this variation. When you build a community, you get to decide if your Seaborn community was on a sailing vessel or if it was by the coast. And by giving players that empowerment from the beginning and ramping them in, I think by the time you put down the map, it feels more innate and it just keeps going. I hope it snowballs.
Right.
Yeah. In playtesting, that's what we found, so we're hoping that people will see that.
And this is a total sidebar, but a question off the top of my head was, you said you've played the game and like been testing it with people who pretty much have no frame of reference for RPG. Is this like your family? Are these just like other people in the office or something?
I haven't played with my family.
Okay.
We've been very lucky. There are folks in the office who I think their first TTRPG was playing Daggerheart with us. But we have friends that aren't in games, so we're very.
All my friends play RPG. No, not actually true.
We're very lucky. I do think Daggerheart may have tapped out our list of people who have never played a TTRPG now, but we have friends that are in lots of different fields, and being able to tap folks that are fully outside the industry is so helpful.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're also benefited by, like, living in LA where there's a lot of creative people, and so we're like, hey, you're a writer. We think you might like this, right? And so that's really fun to see the other end of the spectrum, too, of, like, this is somebody who is incredibly creative, who builds worlds and characters for a living, or wants to build it for a living, right? And so, but they've never played an RPG.
Yeah, never done it quite like this.
And so we're like, hey, why don't you come in and, like, explore what that's like in a collaborative setting? And so the game becomes very much like a writer's room when you have a bunch of people that are like that. And so sort of getting both ends of the spectrum, people that have played, like, really traditional games, or people that don't really come from games at all and are just, like, very, like, aren't creative.
Still have that mindset,
Getting them to buy in, but then also the people that really, like, I'm like, oh, you would love role-playing games. Getting them in is
you
like...
You want to buy a role-playing game?
You want to buy a role-playing game, yeah. Let's do the coat where you, like, have,
all the
Dragonbane and, like,
Okay. Our time is starting to run short already. So I want to rapid fire a couple questions.
Okay.
Is there one rule that remained unchanged throughout the entire design process? Or maybe perhaps multiple rules?
Oh, God. The use of cards.
Okay.
The use of cards was from the very beginning. And that's, I think, one of the only things that stayed the same.
All right, another one.
Oh, the 2D12.
Cool.
The 2D12.
2D12 was from the beginning?
Yeah, we changed how the mechanics worked, but the 2D12 was from the very beginning.
Okay, another one. Is it possible to run Daggerheart without any of the cards or, like, little tokens or... the tokens for tracking things? Can you just do pencil, paper, or dice?
Totally.
Yeah, the appendix in the book has all of the cards' abilities written out, so you can write down all your card abilities on a piece of paper, fold it up in your pocket, and Take your dice.
We also have a loadout sheet that people can use to fill in the info for the cards. So if you don't want the cards, you can use those. There are some cards that are like, place a token on here, but you could always just mark down that you have, like you could just mark on a piece of paper. So totally doable. Although I think the tactile experience for me is one of the things that sets Daggerheart apart from other games.
Okay, perhaps one of the bigger ones that we touched on in the beginning then. What will future content for Daggerheart look like? Are there plans for additional classes, ancestries, pre-written adventures, campaign settings?
It's such a good question.
In success, the world is our oyster, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we're interested in all kinds of support materials.
And just seeing, like you said before, maybe what the community kind of wants the most.
Totally,
needs the most.
And we just delivered the book.
Right.
So like our focus has really been on like how do we deliver a core experience for players that feels full enough that they can pick up one product.
Exactly, yeah.
And play Daggerheart. And from
That's
there,
great.
we really want to see what resonates with people.
And as creative people do, as TTRPG players do, we often have the energy of like, we could do this, and then we could do this, and thinking of all the different ideas, but we reined ourselves in because we want to know what people want and what they're excited about.
I remember we had a question like this with Candela last year where it was like, well, what's outside the Fairlands or whatever, like right away after it's like, okay, we just built this box for everyone to play in and are trying to fill this out and we want you to fill this out, but they're already asking like what's right
The answer
outside
is Homebrew.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think too, we're inviting people we're inviting people in to also do that. Like the domains, like we have a domain circle. So like 2 domains together make a class, and then every class shares its domains with one other class. So you essentially get this circle of like, if Bone and Sage are Ranger, and then Sage and Arcana are Druid, and Blade and Bone are Warrior.
Okay.
Then we haven't even touched like Bone and
Midnight,
circle, right? Or whatever.
Oh,
like there's no through the circles
there.
right now. So there's all this room.
Okay.
And I think campaign forms are the one place we kind of let ourselves expand out a little bit and go like, okay, what's fun? What's outside the box a little bit? What can we, how can we show people the places that we're excited about expanding?
And the reason that we put that in the core rulebook is we wanted to make expansion core to the game. We could have saved all of those things for later releases, but we wanted to make sure that people understood that the game is for this kind of expansive play, this imagining the genre.
You're not locked into a specific subgenre of fantasy. There's all these other things you can do. Okay. Related. Will there be some sort of open license for Daggerheart for people to make third-party materials? Does that already exist? I don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
It already exists.
Awesome.
There's a community gaming license, and Daggerheart will fall under that, and you can make all the stuff you want according to that license.
Cool. Is it going to be published in other languages? Is it already coming in other languages?
We have Candela published in other languages. I think the hope is always more languages.
Cool.
I think that is in success.
Right.
Everything is on the table for us.
Will there be an option to just buy a PDF of the book without buying all the cards? I know there's already sort of like digital versions of it on Demiplane. Is that the one?
Yeah. So there will be digital options available. We can't currently talk about any of them, just because like it's way above our heads, right? Sure. What those are, but know that there's going to be digital stuff available for the game, absolutely.
Okay, and second to last question. This person loves how the character sheets are bundled as a class package with a guide, basic equipment, appropriate cards, etc. Will these still be freely available for players to download when the game is officially released, or will they need to buy their own core book/card deck? I think they're like the starter kit, right? Did it come with like kind of folders of different things for each class?
Quick Start Guide?
I think that's part of it, yeah.
I think the Quick Start Guide will still be available. I think that you'll probably be able to get the character sheets, they should all be available. I think the only thing that you have to buy the core rulebook to get the rule book, right?
Right,
But I think
yeah.
all of, like the supplemental sheets should all
Okay.
just be able to be downloaded from the website.
So anything that was already released for the quick start stuff is still out there somewhere. Okay. And then the last question that I don't even know if you guys would know the answer or be able to say it, but a bunch of people asked, of course.
Sure.
Will Daggerheart replace D&D in Campaign 4 of Critical Role?
Our lips are sealed.
Okay.
Honestly, it's up to them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like they get to ultimately make the decision of what they want to do.
Yeah.
They're gonna go and play their game the way they want to play their game. We made Daggerheart because we love making games.
Yeah.
And I think the world's their oyster as far as the founders are concerned, and like the cast and what they want to do. So it's ultimately up to them what they want to do with the game.
We're very lucky that they wanted to make a game at all.
Yeah.
And so we made the best possible game we could, and they were also so lucky that we've had so much support and that they've enjoyed it so much. And after that, it's all
you're gonna see Daggerheart on the channel, right?
Right.
Like that's the
I
big
think
thing.
that's
We
a
know
fair
that's what
assumption.
we
Like, it'll
that's
be
what we
there
know is
some
like
degree, yeah.
we know that you'll see Daggerheart on the channel. What that looks like, we can't talk about yet.
Okay. And then, final question, even though I said that was the final question. Where can people pre-order Daggerheart? And where can they follow more of your work if they want to?
I love that. You can thanks, Bob. You can pre-order at Daggerheart.com.
Daggerheart.com.
And then we have the booth downstairs. Also, if you're at PAX,
You're at PAX and you want to see the physical copy.
it's there. I assume this will probably go up after PAX. So
Yeah,
I hope
probably-
you're not editing
If
it
you want to go see
during
the
PAX.
physical copy,
And our work. I mean, we're putting out stuff through Darrington, and also we have independent stuff. You have a podcast. I have other games that I've made.
Yeah.
So
Shout out your podcast.
Yeah.
oh yeah, my podcast is called Willing and Fable. It's at everywhere at Willing and Fable, and I'm the Rowan Hall on Twitter.
And I'm at Spencer Stark.
Excellent. And I'm Bob. Thank you to the Bob World Builder patrons for making this all possible, and keep building. That's it.
Love it.
Cool.